Okay, my pleasure to welcome to the stage Governor Gavin Newsom of California. How are you?
Hi.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Hello, everybody. Hello, hello. They don't give you a break between speakers?
No breaks, no breaks.
Interviews.
All gas, no breaks.
Oh, look at that. You jumped right into it.
How are you doing?
I'm, a little anxious.
Okay.
A lot of people are, a little concerned about the president's speech yesterday.
Let's get right into it. And I'll just quote two lines. He called climate change the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world. And he said that the scientific consensus on global warming was created by stupid people. What's your reaction to that?
I know Chris is coming up next, and he's got to defend himself, not just Trump. What an abomination. What an embarrassment. What a fraud. And I say that as a guy that lives in one of the most crisis-prone states in America, but a state that's seen lifestyles, places, traditions completely destroyed because of the reality of climate change. I've seen communities like Grizzly Flats and Paradise, California, wiped off the map. There's no Republican, we've said this many times, or Democratic thermometer. It's just reality. And a lot of us are getting mugged by reality. You don't have to believe in science, believe in your own damn eyes. The hots are getting a lot hotter, the dries are getting drier, these atmospheric rivers, these rain bombs, simultaneous droughts and floods. Wake up to the reality. He's an ideologue, Trump, and he's not even a good one because he has no sort of foundational philosophy, and his thinking has the form and substance of fog.
Okay, well, we'll get into the details of what's happening on the ground in California. That was your response to the speech yesterday. But I want to stay at the national level for just a moment here, because you have been engaged in California in advancing many of the national efforts to try to move the needle on emissions. During the Biden administration, with legislation like the IRA, the country as a whole seemed to be making real progress in trying to advance the kinds of clean energy policies that would give the United States a shot to start to bring down, in a really durable and sustainable way, its emissions. We've obviously seen a dramatic reversal in the last 9 months. And I want to ask you, when you look at the essential repeal of the IRA, the cuts to FEMA, the radical changes at the EPA, what's your assessment of how, on the whole, these policy changes have changed the United States' trajectory on the issue of climate?
Well, hey, look, these guys want to recreate the 19th century. And they are ceding our leadership to China and other parts of the globe. China is just going to clean our clock. They are, on supply chains, on manufacturing, not just on the technology as it relates to electric vehicles, but the tech stack related to the electric vehicles and mobility broadly. We've completely ceded that. And with respect to Mary Barra and GM, they sold out. They sold out to this administration. They sold out our leadership that goes back to Ronald Reagan, 1967, with the creation of the California Air Resources Board. Ronald Reagan, who created the California Energy Commission 50 years ago, just celebrated its anniversary.
For those that aren't familiar, can you explain what you're referring to with Mary Barra and GE there?
Well, they sold us out with the CRA.
Yeah.
They completely sold us out. They lied. They worked behind our back with the Trump administration to roll back our authority that has been vested by courts for decades, over a half century, to regulate tailpipe emissions. That goes back to the origin story in Los Angeles, Southern California, when Governor Reagan, at the time, was in office, and business leaders were outraged by the smog in Los Angeles. They couldn't compete. People didn't want to live there. So they created a regulatory body under the Air Resources Board. 3 years later, it was codified by another Republican by the name of Richard Nixon, the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the Endangered Species Act, environmental leadership in a bipartisan manner. And California, as a consequence, has led the nation in these efforts, reducing costs, creating innovation, opportunities. You think I'm exaggerating on innovation? There's no Tesla without California's regulatory model, period, full stop. It was because of those rules and regulations. So this is as much about the economy, stupid, as it is about your love of trees and bees. And so that's what's so remarkable about these folks that are currently in office. And they're just they're wholly owned subsidiary of fossil fuel interests, period, full stop. This is about short-termism, cheap buck. That's all it's about. It's not about you and your kids and grandkids. I mean, I'm old enough to remember this guy, RFK Jr., who was writing, no, this is important, who was writing some beautiful
This is the
pieces.
climate conference, not the health conference.
No, who's demonstrably built his brand on environmental leadership, who talked about, wrote about, beautifully, by the way, wrote about this notion that environmental injury is deficit spending and socializing costs on the backs of our kids and grandkids. I remember that RFK Jr., to your point.
Yeah.
And, maybe in one of these cabinet meetings, he may want to remind himself of who he once was and maybe share those ideas and idealism and sense of purpose. He talked in spiritual terms, cultural terms, a way of connecting to our Creator, 10,000 generations. And we're destroying it. And so in this process of liquidation, it is a disgrace what Donald Trump has done, and it is a disgrace what his administration is doing to the environment. Forgive me.
I tried. When you think about the lasting policy damage, you're familiar as anyone with election cycles. We may be in a position 2 years from now, 4 years from now, with a very different leadership. But in the immediate, we are seeing the rollback of rules. We're seeing the changes in laws that could long outlast the next election cycle or two. Do you feel like there is lasting damage being done?
100%.
Okay.
This is different. It's different. I mean, if you're on Team Trump, you're very proud of that. There's a surgical nature to this that we didn't see in Trump 1.0. And I'll remind you, for a couple of you that may know this, most of you don't, we were involved in 122 lawsuits with the Trump administration the first 4 years. 70 plus of those were in the environmental space. They tried everything to vandalize our hard-earned leadership, and we won the vast majority of those cases. Yeah. What's different now, and what GM allowed, and forgive me for being so pointed, this is about our future. I had one of the most devastating fires in the middle of winter in Southern California. 16,000 structures. I sat there. First time I met Donald Trump was in Paradise, California. Kept referring to it as Pleasure, California. And his response was, rake your forests. And he was serious. And I'm serious. Forgive the intensity on this. I mean, and in every category, the recklessness is next level. And the supine Congress is the worst part of this. How complicit they have been in this respect. They've done not a damn thing. Not a damn thing. And that's why this is different, because the CRA was a nuclear option, taking away our authority. We're litigating, but it's a very different administration. That was a level of, quote unquote, sophistication that was not present in the first term. The endangerment, we go down the list. You know it. And so that's why I'm more concerned, forgive me, about the lasting damage than I would as it relates to the proverbial pendulum. Sure. And then we'll capture this back.
Sure. And let's get right into some of the actions this administration is taking to try to squelch California's own efforts to adapt to a warmer planet, to try to bend the curve on your own emissions. You mentioned the tailpipe rules, but that's just one of them. There's cap and trade. There's the emission standards. The list goes on. Can you give us a snapshot of how you're actually trying to respond to what you just said is a more sophisticated administration effort to, in your words, sort of deprive you of your own authority to address these issues? Yeah,
I mean, this is, conservatives used to wax on about the 10th Amendment and federalism. What BS, truly. So California's leadership has done a few things, and I think it's important to paint this picture, and I'm going to do it in an optimistic way because I'm deeply optimistic about it. California has been running the fourth largest economy in the world on a carbon-free engine 9 out of 10 days so far this year. 67% of California runs on clean energy, 60% of our energy. which isn't bad as a large-scale economy. When I say 9 out of 10 days, let me be fair, it's about 6.5 to 7 hours a day, 100% green energy. The economy has grown and expanded substantially as we've advanced these policies. There's not a single goal we haven't met or exceeded. We've led the nation as it relates to not just low-carbon green growth as an abstract, but on policies, to your question, like cap and trade. Now we referred to it with a bill I just signed last week, cap and invest.
Yep.
And by the way, in the cap and invest program, we are investing back $60+ billion to lower the costs of utilities and electricity by providing rebates to consumers because of the commitment we're making in this space. We have proven the paradigm, the genius of and versus the tyranny of or, that we can advance a low-carbon green growth frame and continue to outperform our peers all across this country in terms of economic growth and economic expansion. 60 headquartered companies in the ZEV space. The innovation has allowed us to lay claim as a fossil state to have 6 times more green jobs than we do fossil jobs. We are on the other side of this debate. It's no longer alternative energy. That's an old construct. It's green energy and it's low-cost energy. We have the largest installation of battery, large-scale utility battery storage in the United States, second in the globe behind China. We're deeply proud of that leadership. And not only is the cap and invest a market-based strategy, but the low-carbon fuel standards as well, which, again, was nation-leading. We're what's left of environmental policy, despite the headwinds in Washington, D.C. And so if there's anything I want to communicate for those of you particularly outside this country, we are your stable and reliable partner. And we will continue to be in this space.
How, though? I mean, just take us a little inside baseball here. When the Trump administration comes with these more sophisticated attacks, how do you, as an individual state or as a coalition of states with things like All In, there are these other efforts to try to use the state level to push back against what we're seeing out of Washington right now?
Yeah, no, it's partnership.
Can it work, though?
Yeah, it has to. The failure is not an option in this space. And so, it's the old African proverb. You want to go fast, go alone. You want to go far, go together. So we built these coalitions. You reference All In with Bloomberg, which I co-chair. We're part of the U.S. Climate Alliance, which I co-chair with 24 other governors in 23 other states. We're part of this larger coalition, happen to co-chair as well, the MOU Under 2 coalition, which is a subnational coalition at the global level, working through the aegis of a lot of our international organizations. And that's an effort in a way to continue to have stable leadership and continue to pass partnership. We were with the Brazilian representatives, the EU representatives yesterday, with the UK representatives and Australia representatives, literally just yesterday. We've signed MOUs subnationally throughout China, including with President Xi just 18 months ago. One state has been able to achieve all of that because our state of mind is around building a resilient framework of partnership to do what we can to withstand this assault on common sense and reason coming from the Trump administration.
As some of these cases, perhaps, though, move to the Supreme Court, are you concerned about the potential outcomes there?
Well, the Supreme Court just said it's okay to racially profile. This is the Supreme Court in the shadow docket, appropriately named, that said you can send Border Patrol and ICE to go after people on the basis of where they congregate, on the basis of language they speak. So, yeah, I'm very concerned about that. I mean, look where these folks came from. Look who promoted them. Look who vetted them. I mean, this is serious. And the worst part about it is how so many previously serious people have sold out. The appeasement that's going on in this country. And forgive me, I want to stay on topic, but it's simultaneous crises here. It's not just crises of climate, but also in our democracy.
Can you be specific there when you say these people? Who are you referring to?
I'm talking about people, one I referenced. People that know better, they're not doing better.
Corporate leaders?
Yes, you've seen it across the board. People are scared to death of this guy. And it's the appalling silence. It's the complicity. You're seeing the most successful, wealthiest people scared to death of this guy. It makes me sick. Is it worth it to you to watch this 249 years just vanish in real time? So you ask about the Supreme Court, it's part of that. I'm old enough to remember in the history books this notion of the enduring values of our founding fathers, the best of the Roman Republic, Greek democracy, popular sovereignty. It's trying to rig the elections. This notion of co-equal branches of government. I said supine Congress, supine Supreme Court, rolling over to this guy. It's no longer the rule of law. It's increasingly the rule of Don. It is a serious moment in world history. And we're losing our moral authority by the hour as he continues to exercise his formal authority by the minute.
We've got a lot to get to. And I want to keep sort of bringing the focus back down to the ground in California, as well as suffering attacks from the White House on some of your climate policies. The state itself has, in recent months, adjusted some of its own climate policies. I'm thinking of CEQA. I'm thinking of withdrawing a request to enact stricter pollution controls on certain trucks. How are you starting to balance the realities of what's possible in this environment and what's needed to build housing and to power this state with your climate commitment?
Well, I do acknowledge the world we invented is competing against us, particularly as it relates to the paralysis of process and law.
Oh, slow down. What did you say there, and what did you mean?
I'm talking about CEQA, which is our NEPA, which is, our back to, again, leadership established by this Reagan guy has a lot in common.
This is an environmental law that allows for a lengthy review process.
Yeah, and lengthy is it's just abuse. It's been abused. And it's now being abused against large-scale utility projects to actually green and clean our grid. It's being used against housing production, which is the original sin. Explains more things in more ways on more days about the challenges in the state of California. And that NIMBYism that is deeply part of it. And so, yeah, we have reformed. And very proud of it. And, I'm here at the New York Times. Thank you, Ezra, for his leadership in this abundance
I'm David,
mindset.
just for the record.
God bless. Appreciate you. But this notion of abundance, which is a deeply held construct in California, it's a state of dreamers, doers, with always had an abundance mindset, but not as it relates to our regulatory. So we want to support risk-taking, not restlessness, but we've put so much sand in the gears of our permitting processes and other regulatory processes that we have been unwinding that. And let me give you a proof point in that. Just since 2019, it's interesting fact to me, because I grew up in San Francisco. In 1874, the first electricity came to the state of California, 1874. We've done about 105 gigawatts of installed capacity. But just since 2019, we've installed 30.2. 100 over the course of a century and a half, just in the last 6 years, 30 gigs. And it's predominantly not only necessity, but also the permitting processes and reforms that are now taking shape and producing real results. Let me give you an additional proof point. 7,000 megawatts that we were able to install just last year alone, which is record-breaking for us. And what's also record-breaking, and I hope sets a course of a mindset that's a little different, is we also now have exceeded by a substantial margin the number of public chargers to gas nozzles. And I think it's just an interesting thing people can get their arms around. Let me be specific. We have 120,000 gas nozzles in California. We have 201,000 public charging spaces. Over 1 million when you consider private. I'm just making the point that is an important point. The range anxiety, the BYD 5-minute charging capacity, the dominant flooding of technology, as I talked about the tech stack that's going on around the rest of the globe, and they're giving that up. They're giving that up to roll back this last half century. And that's what we're fighting against as we fight for reform. Status quo is never good enough. And continue our progress to get from 67% to 100%, which we will achieve.
Okay. Sticking with permitting, I want to turn to the fires in Los Angeles, which you mentioned earlier. President Trump's been extremely critical of the state's response to the fires. You've pushed back, saying he's got his facts wrong. I don't want to get into that. Setting all that aside, I know you might, but I don't.
I just
but here's the question, because I think we now have we're 8 months past it. We're 8 months past those tragic fires. Looking back, what could Los Angeles have done better, and what could the state have done better to prepare for an event like that and respond in the immediate aftermath?
California has the largest aerial firefighting fleet in the world. We've doubled the CAL FIRE state budget in the last 6 years. LA County is the most resource county in the United States of America in terms of firefighting personnel. We pre-positioned 104 engines from Northern California and throughout the region. We were on site within hours of that fight. Here was the challenge. You had 100-mile-an-hour winds attached to a fire. Unprecedented. In the middle of the winter. We had the red flag warnings, the Office of Emergency Services, all our partnership and mutual aid system had begun the process of pre-positioning, and they were overwhelmed by that moment. There's an after-action report that's about to come out, independent, that I believe, I haven't had a chance to review it, will only reinforce the frame that I just presented. And that's the new reality we're in.
So is the answer nothing? There's nothing?
There's, of course, everything. But this idea that there's a spigot of water and we could have turned the sprinklers on is what the President of the United States said.
Which I didn't want to get into.
That's what he said. You can't, but don't allow that to be normalized. That's not trivial.
Right.
Because he was winning that debate in the early part. He was shape-shifting what people were saying. He had this guy, Elon Musk, doing the same. Shape-shifting, winning the messaging war. And isn't that back to this topic around low-carbon green growth, changing the way we produce and consume energy? Isn't that also a huge part of this? You're going to have Chris come up here, talk about all of the above. We've never been more this. We've now record-breaking. Okay, you know what? They are flooding the zone on the messaging, and we continue to be on our heels on this. And this is a big, big part of the paradigm of concern that I have for this country. Is that facts don't matter anymore. It's narrative. Illusion rules. And you have these grieving networks that are surround sound 24/7 spewing this bullshit. Turn on Fox, prime time, when it comes to the issue of climate. Hey, we've lost it in that respect. So we have to own that reality and we have to assert ourselves in this new reality. And again, I'm not here just to cast aspersions on the status quo, but I'm trying to change it and shapeshift it. If you've looked at my social media, you could see I am leaning into a different paradigm of thinking. And maybe even my presentation today. Forgive me if you came here for niceties. My life's too short to continue to bloviate and bullshit you. It's what I think. Just telling you what I think.
We talked about the fires. As governor of California, when you look ahead, what concerns you most about the impacts of climate change on your state? Is it the threat of a mega flood in the Central Valley? Is it more fires? Is it coastal erosion? I mean, you're the governor of this state, and you just identified the fact that these things, the science will tell us, are being made worse by a warming planet. What keeps you up at night when you think about where the state might be hit next?
Well, you listed things off, and my response to you is yes. All of them. I mean, it's, we're in this adaptation frame, we're in a resiliency frame, we're we've 10x'd, quite literally 10x'd our vegetation and forest management. I guess that's a version of raking. But we can't make up the last half century of Smokey the Bear and some suppression strategies that now we're paying a bit of a price for, doing what we can to prevent. But look, when you have simultaneous droughts and floods, when you're stretched in terms of that emergency response, when you have a president that is quite literally gutting our emergency response, FEMA, gutting our capacity to predict, NOAA, doesn't believe by definition in science, his own words yesterday apparently, said this is just a scam, this is a con job, all of this. Doesn't believe in our capacity to outcompete China. He ceded that. He just doesn't believe that. By definition. We finally had this flywheel of momentum with the $369 billion and the $1 trillion+ of tax credits coming from the IRA, the Infrastructure Act. We had a framework where we were starting to build again. You saw, I think, Chris today, God bless him. I have no animus towards Chris. He's going to come up, and this is not personal with him. I just fundamentally disagree with his worldview.
You can stay and talk to him if you want.
No, I appreciate it. But he just canceled $13 billion on clean energy tax credits. I mean, President Xi, I don't know what else he's got to applaud. He must have been just like, I think he's going to give Trump a bear hug when he arrives. I mean, just watching it slip away. By the way, the vast majority of those investments were in rural and red parts of our country. Complete betrayal. Total betrayal. The tariff regime. You go down the list. And so I worry about ag. You have a big ag footprint. You didn't add that. Obviously, coastal erosion. But I worry about traditions. I said places, lifestyles, tradition.
What do you mean by that?
I just took I swear, and we've all had these experiences. I didn't have this. I have a beautiful nine-year-old boy who's often not so beautiful. He's on his device, and I'm pulling him off. And he had never been to Yosemite, and I finally got him. He was crying, outraged that we were going in, and it didn't look. And I said, fine, you get the device, just stop. And when we cut the car, and then he walked out, and he looked up. I swear to you, I want to tear up. He looked up, and he literally looked up. He goes, I didn't even know you ever. He goes, this is so, he used this word, majestic. I'm like, literally, unless he got that on some game, I don't know where he heard it. And he literally started walking around, and then he said, let's go, and started walking. Let's talk about it. I remember that with my dad. People were locked out of Yosemite 2 years ago because of the fires. You've got these sentinels, these trees. We went to the sequoia groves, and he walked around them and looked at everything, thousands and thousands of years. And he felt connected to that. There's something beautiful in that. There's something spiritual in that. And these guys will sell it out to the cheapest bidder. And that's what they're doing. They are. Who else says it's a con job that believes any differently? So forgive me again the intensity, but this is, for me, there's a generational construct here. It's about what makes life worth living. It's about a sense of well-being, a purpose, a mission that I feel right now in terms of the policy to be more accountable and to push back. And I'm very proud, again, and forgive me on the policy frame, but the legislature this year, and it's a point of optimism, California, we moved in a completely different direction. Daylight versus darkness. And we did so by punctuating some very, very strong environmental laws in the last few weeks that I'm deeply proud of, and I hope it gives some of you some optimism that there are some good things still happening in this space across the United States.
Okay. In closing, we're at a climate conference, as I reminded you earlier. But I want your take, for the final question, on this political moment. And we're in an incredibly divisive time. I don't need to tell you this. You regularly condemn some of the rhetoric coming out of the White House, but as you acknowledged earlier, your own social media, your own statements have gotten much more aggressive. You're trolling the president daily now. Yeah. Given that, so what is the way forward? I mean, how do you square?
I have a hat available on my. I'm going to answer your question. I just want you to know I have a hat. It's not on sale, but you can get it. Called Newsom is always right, was always right.
Okay.
It's on the Patriots site.
Okay, but how do you square?
I square it because we're putting up a mirror. We're putting up a mirror.
But what's the way forward? That's fine. So that excuses it.
No, it's not just fine.
But what's the way forward?
I'm going to answer it. It's not fine because it's not fine what's going on. It's been allowed to be normalized. There's nothing normal about what's going on Truth Social and Donald Trump. There's nothing normal. There's total deviation in normalcy. And so it has to be called out with repetition. I mean, I could sit there. We have something called Prop 50 in California. This guy's trying to rig the midterm elections. And I promise you, you know that they know us, Democrats. We're more likely to write an op-ed in the New York Times than do a damn thing about it. And the difference is we did something about it with this initiative. And so what I'm trying to do is do something about this moment. Wake people up. You've been lulled to sleep. And the pivot I get is, what's your positive alternative vision? You know what? In Stoic terms, the path, the obstacle is the way. What stands in the way becomes the way. And right now, the biggest obstacle is Donald Trump and Trumpism and what he is doing across the spectrum. So, yes, we're putting up a mirror. We're calling out this absurdity. And we're calling out those that are complicit in amplifying that absurdity. The folks at Primetime Pravda on Fox. The folks that are out there amplifying this without any sort of reflective understanding of how ridiculous it is when you put your picture up on Mount Rushmore, or you put yourself as the Pope, or in a Superman costume, the President of the United States in all caps. Of course it's absurd. So it's a little bit of parody and a little bit of levity with a Democratic that, frankly, is in a party where sometimes we tend to take ourselves a little too seriously. And we, frankly, are a little dull at times. And so I'm just trying to push back. But I assure you, these lawsuits, the cap and invest program, our interconnection regime that we just put into place, the $60 billion of utility rebates to customers, the work we're doing on our 30 by 30 and our biodiversity, regenerative medicine, and carbon capture, and issues around direct air capture, on hydrogen, the work we're doing on long-duration pumping, the fact that we have the largest battery installations, I said, outside of any jurisdiction against China, the fact that we continue to lead with over 25% of our new cars are zero-emission cars. We're also leading with policy. We're leading with substance, not just style. So it's both and I know my time is up, but I'm grateful because I'm not convinced that our time is up in the fight to address climate change. Stay optimistic.
Governor Gavin Newsom.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.